Welcome to part 3 of our video series on the AIMS query tool. In this video, I'll show you how to create a custom query completely from scratch. To get started, go to the main menu and select Reporting. On the left, select an involvement type if your AIMS implementation has more than one. I'll select Pretrial, then click Queries. On the My Queries tab, select Add Query. Before you build your query, you want to know what data it is you're looking for. It can help to start with a question that data can help you answer, or a request that data can help you fulfill. In my case, I want to produce a list of the various release decisions that were made this past year, and I want the list to include the race and gender of the defendants for whom these release decisions were made. I first need to select a data source that contains the data records I'm looking for. I'll browse this list to see what looks helpful. Here we have a judicial decisions data source. In AIMS, release decisions are called judicial decisions. I can preview this data source by selecting it and checking out the columns listed on the right. These columns represent the types of data that the judicial decisions data source contains, so things like the decision type and supervision level. Some of the columns may not be displayed by default, but you can click on the Manage Columns icon at the top right and see the rest of the columns on the left. Once you select a data source, a blue link may appear underneath that lets you add a related data source. Data sources are related if they have at least one column in common. This shared column links the two data sources and acts as a cross-reference between them, allowing the query to retrieve data records from both sources. I mentioned earlier that I want my list of judicial decisions to include the race and gender of the affected defendants. But as we can see by the columns, this data source doesn't have data about the defendants. It only has data about the judicial decisions. But perhaps I can add a second, related data source that does have information about defendants. I'll click the blue link and AIMS shows me the available data sources that are related to the first one. I'll select Involvements because in AIMS, a defendant's release decision information is contained within their pretrial involvement. So now I have the judicial decisions, the involvements that contain those decisions, and now I want to retrieve the data for the actual clients or defendants these involvements belong to. I'll click this link again, and this time I'll select the defendant's data source. I think I now have all the data sources needed to produce the list of data records I want. To confirm, I'll check out the columns on the right again, and now I can see we have additional demographic data for the defendants, including names, dates of birth, sex, and race. Now we can move on to the Parameters section. This is where we specify the particular records we want to see by filtering on certain columns. I only want my list to show judicial decisions made this past year in 2020, so I'll set up a date range filter first. As you saw in the previous video, we used two parameters to define a date range. I'll click in the column field and notice that we have a list of columns available to filter on organized by the data source. The judicial decisions data source has a completed date column, so I'll select that. I'll start the date range at on or after January 1st. And I'll add another parameter to end the date range at on or before December 31st. I'll leave the AND option as is because I want the judicial decision to have been completed on or after January 1st and on or before December 31st. Let's add another parameter. Perhaps I'm only interested in seeing the judicial decisions for my female population. So I'll add a new row, and in the column field, I'll scroll down to the defendants category and select the sex column. For the operator, I'll use the equal sign, and then in the value column, I'll select female. So this parameter states that the sex of the defendant must be equal to female. Check out the Queries topic in the Online Help Center for a list of all the operators available and how they work. Again, I will leave the AND option as is because I want the list to only show judicial decisions that were from 2020 and that were for female defendants. If I were to select the OR option, I would get judicial decisions that are either from 2020 or are for female defendants. That would give me extra data records from outside 2020 or for male defendants, and we don't want that. So our parameters are set, and now we can run this query. I'll click Apply and check out my results on the right. Here you can see we have a list of judicial decisions that were completed in 2020 and made for female defendants. Once again, I can click the Manage Columns icon and customize this list so that I'm only seeing the columns I'm interested in the order I want them displayed. Note that you can choose the data source at the top of the dialog box, then choose the columns that belong to that data source. With this query looking good, I can click Save at the top right and give my query a name. I'll save it to the My Queries tab. Now you know how to create a custom query from scratch. Join us for part 4, where I'll show you how to organize your queries and share them with others. Thanks for watching.